Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer weiteren Folge Witch on the Holy Night. Und wir sind hier jetzt eine Nacht zuvor und erleben jetzt nach, was Shojiro gesehen hat. Und zwar, dass halt Aoki und Alice... Aoki? Ne, Aoki war das gar nicht. Aoko und Alice gegen irgendwas gekämpft haben. Und zwar mit Magie. The flame subsided, just as unnaturally as it had ignited. No crackling, no burning smell.
結界返すわ。死体を確認するから。
After telling this to Alice, I headed towards the motionless figure. I killed it. I killed it. I killed it. Regardless of who my opponent was, I just took someone's life. My throat parched. I swallowed the truth that without this sense of reality I would have been helpless. So hard and bitter, impossible to swallow, but I tried to anyway. I was unnervingly calm. My heart pounded and my breath felt heavy, but my mind was nonetheless calm. By the time I realized it, the charred remains were already in front of me. Bracing for a counterattack, I carefully examined the corpse. Everything seemed fine. This body lying slumped on the ground was nothing but ash.
Huh?
But something wasn't right. To begin with, its remains didn't smell organic. Not willing to believe my hunch, I took a closer look at the corpse's face. All that greeted me was the featureless white face of a mannequin. Screaming, I kicked the mannequin. The corpse crumbled to ash and disappeared with the wind. No, this was no corpse, this was just a puppet. In all of our efforts to lure the master out, we had once again been tricked by a familiar. My debut, my first test out in the open, would be postponed for another day.
いつになったら一人前にって。
At that moment, I suddenly noticed something familiar in the corner of my eye. Something seemed strange about the slide on the other end of the park. It appeared as though its shadow was larger than it should be. Was I still drunk on the high of battle? It took me a second to realize what it was. Calling out was a mistake. Started by my voice, the figure wearing a familiar high school uniform took a step back and then it broke into a sprint, like someone running for their life. Or should I say, he was doing exactly that. In a rush, I shouted to my partner, but she hadn't even noticed the third party's presence in the first place, so it wasn't as if I could move by myself. Embarrassingly, the fight had taken more out of me than I would have liked. There was no time for niceties. For us, being seen here was a matter of life and death. Shaking off the numbness in my legs, I made for the park's exit. I had to admire his escape. The witness party to the entire night's proceedings had disappeared into the darkness of the residence district without a trace. Complaining to myself wouldn't bring back the figure in uniform. Bitter at my own incompetence, I gave up the chase. Though temporary, the park had become Alice's woods. For anyone within a few feet of the park, other park goers' identifiable features and voice became murky, like the stuff of fairy tales. Tonight's proceedings may have had a witness, but if our identities were still hidden, then this was still a chance. I returned to the park. That uniform was without a doubt from my high school. That was clue enough. If he was a schoolmate of mine, I had plenty of methods to flush him out. Amidst my grumbling, I set my priorities straight. Before some strange rumor spread, I needed to seal the witness's mouth shut. That was the highest priority, quickly and without mercy. Looking up, I saw Alice's previously distant figure. Though she was in so much trouble as I was with her existence as mage also exposed, she had but one thing to say. Her statue-like figure staring into the darkness seemed more expressionless than calm. I was pissed off. Her inscrutable voice resembled the moonless night so much it made me angry. Okay, damit haben wir das nächste Kapitel abgeschlossen. Nächstes ist dann Blues in Her Name. Ich möchte einfach mal schauen, Archive, was ist. Mhm. Episode 4, Blues in Her Name. There really isn't any other way of saying this. I am a magician. Kind of like those witches in fairy tales, who live alone in the woods and perform miracles with the wave of a finger. While the popular depiction of it differs from reality, it's closer to the truth than you know. So, just so we are clear, no, I didn't fly through the sky on a broom. I don't fly. I cannot transform into animals or speak with small birds. Modern magics are nothing so fanciful. Our existence sounds unbelievable, but we are quite grounded. Though it may seem like we can do anything, we are actually majorly constrained. And while I still have a lot to learn about it, this is my real job. Sounds a lot more romantic than being a high school student, right? Naturally, this is a secret I don't just share with anyone. And mates must do everything in their power to conceal their work. That is the first and most important of the association's 10 laws. Not that I'm tempted to let the cat out of the bag in the least. My secret identity as an honor student is intact, and absolutely no good will come of me revealing my true nature. If anything, it would only lead to more headaches. That's why I do everything in my power to keep it a secret. Of course, if I had accomplished anything as a magician by now, then maybe I would see it differently. I fantasize about revealing my secret life's work to a single, special person who when I finally make something of myself. Yeah, it would be pretty stellar to just confess one day, by the way, I'm a magician. That idea alone is enough to keep me from spoiling the big reveal, regardless of the association's rule. My grandfather patted me on the head when I shared these thoughts with him. I don't know if that was a praise or what, but I remember that his touch was gentle. I first learned that I would be succeeding my grandfather on the day I graduated middle school. When I returned home, there he was. Your elder sister left on a journey. From this day forth, you are the heir to the Aozaki. He said it in such a matter-of-fact way. I knew that Aozaki family passed down this old tradition of magecraft, but to be honest, I never imagined I would be the one to wield it. Magecraft is supposed to be passed down to a single child. It was my sister's rule to take the mantle, and I had no interest in dedicating myself to so many rules and routines. I planned to live a normal life. I had hopes and dreams for the future. I felt bad for my sister, but I was determined to live my life my way. And while I managed to do just that for a time, I was blindsided by a voiceless counterpunch. Since then, I've been thrust headlong into a world I'd only observed from afar. It was a hell of a way to start high school, but I suppose it wasn't all that bad, all things considered. A lot has happened since then. I was so dazed by this newfound life that a year of school motored right by. I was a second year before I knew it. Thankfully, nothing drastic has happened. 6 months were my roommate and I totally tried to kill each other notwithstanding. As it happens, I've got a natural talent at this magic stuff, so I've yet to have any hang-ups there either. I'm only human, so I've had my fair share of headaches for sure, but never once did I worry about my future. I thought my life would be smooth sailing all the way. If only everything had gone to plan last night. Alice Kuronji asked Aoko Aosaki the second she entered the house. Her dark eyes succeeded where her voice failed to communicate the gravity of the situation. Aoko took her off her unflattering coat, hung it on the hanger, and sat down on the sofa. Alice sat across from her, with a table separating them.
そっちはよくないわね。偵察に行けるのは7個ぐらい。ここのところ使ってばかりで作り置きをする余裕もなかったし。
Alice's gaze drifted from Aoko to the box on the table.
あの夜、町を監視していた奴はいないの？町の偵察は完璧なんでしょ？そいつら。それは昼間の話よ。夜間飛行は危険が多いわ。
Meaning they were of the least used when needed the most, Aoko said.
そういうあなたは朝は随分と強気だったけど。ん？ああ、こっちは予定通りよ。明日までには絞り込めると思う。今朝、飛び丸にうちの生徒の自宅と行動時間を調べさせたから。あの時間に公園をうろつくやつはめったにいないし、簡単に割り出せる。そう簡単に行くの？行くわよ。伊達に生徒会に勤めてないわ。その程度のデータは揃えてある。月1のバイト先はおろか、親しい友人宅との移動時間、その優先順位まで調べ上げてるんだから。人には見せたくなかったリストだけど、そんな余裕ないでしょ？だから、そういうのが向いてる副会長にやらせたの。
Incidentally, the creation of the secret file started the moment Aoko became student council president. The mere rumor of its existence was enough to strike fear into the entire student body.
そう。徹底しているわね。
Alice was only mildly surprised. It had been almost 2 years since they first started living together. She knew as well as anyone that when Aoko put her mind to something, she saw it through to the end.
ま、私もあれがこんな風に役立つとは思ってもみなかったけど。
But what happened last night was far beyond a mere exception to the rule. This predicament should not have even been possible.
それより、原因は分かったの？結界の結びに不手際があったなんてのは聞かないわよ。
Aoko glared at her. The ward was Alice's responsibility. If it was to blame for last night's trouble, Alice had to own up to her fair share. Alice and Aoko may have been roommates and partners, but it was a relationship of convenience. While lineage had brought them together, they were more like enemies than allies. Ultimately, they were just not a match. Where there was a blunder, it was punished. Where there was an opening, it would be attacked. If there was even an opportunity, the two of them would kill each other in the event of such a moment. Alice locked eyes with Aoko. Aoko's fierce gaze could make a grown man cower in fear, but Alice did not bat an eyelash.
仮の話だけど、あの結界に落ち度があったのなら、今まで何度もこういう状況になっていたでしょうね。
I suppose you're right, Aoko agreed as the question reaffirmed her trust in Alice.
結界のあり方は完璧だったのね。絶対とまでは。
Alice answered as flatly as ever. A bounded field is like a sanctuary sealed away from the real world. Steps are taken whereby a certain area is cut off from the outside world. There are various kinds of bounded fields. There are physical ones that close off an area behind a wall, and less tangible ones that use mirrors, mist, or trees to conceal that which occurs within. However, when closing off an area to the outside world, you cannot avoid communicating the abnormality's existence. In other words, there may be closed off to the outside world, but it is impossible to hide the fact that it is closed off. In time, someone will take interest in a sealed-off area, even if they cannot see what's going on inside. Some might say this is putting the cart before the horse. The ideal field would be one that was both undetectable and impervious to interference from the outside. That was exactly the kind Alice had generated in the park the night before.
その場所に用があっても、今はないように思わせれば、 誰もそこには立ち入らない。隠したい場所の周りに一時的な意識の改ざんを促す結界を張る。手間はかかるんだけど、1時間程度の人よけには信頼性は高い結界よね。アリスの鏡を使った一級品だし、途中で破れることもない。事実、入ってきたのはあの人形だけだとはっきり感じられた。これで完璧じゃなかったら何が完璧なのよ。私もわからない。森作りに落ち度はなかったわ。森は数日かけて栽培したものだし、今まで通り信頼できる結界よ。けど例外があったのなら、どこかで見落としがあったのね。
So Alice was conceded the possibility her eyes expressed her confidence that she had overlooked nothing.
参った。こうなると、一番いいのは、あいつが人形使いだってパターンね。それならかろうじて納得できる。問題は、侵入した時の違和感をどうやって消したかってことだけど。
The thought of being targeted by this individual was pretty terrifying. As they were able to penetrate Alice's field, it could only mean that their skill in magecraft was superior to Alice's. Alice in her current state would be completely helpless against such a foe.
その線はないわ。彼は部外者よ。ムクドリはともかく、ロビンが後をたどれなかったもの。魔力の気配は全くなし。誰かの魔術で操られている犠牲者というのもないわね。
Aoko was quickly running out of straws to grasp, and that meant she wasn't out of questions to ask. All she could do was call it bad luck and leave it at that.
魔術師の秘密を見られて、おまけに目撃者を逃がしたか。普通の高校生の悩みじゃないな。
The sofa groaned as she leaned back. Her gaze went up to the brown ceiling and with a sigh. It wasn't much of a view. She was becoming increasingly depressed.
覚悟を決めておいて。
Her roommates seemed indifferent, but Aoko just kept staring up at the wooden ceiling.
それとも、あなたにできないのなら、私が言ってあげてもいいけど。
The cool-mannered girl's statement carried an equally icy implication. Aoko took the words in slowly with as much sincerity as she could muster. It was like trying to swallow molten lead.
そうだ。覚悟なんて、もう決めたでしょ。
The thought sounded hollow, even as it popped into her head. This was clearly different from last time. While the aim was indeed the same, the circumstances surrounding her target were clearly different. She may have been determined before, but that was a mage. If enemies emerged, she would kill them. If she was challenged, she would step up to the fight. It was a fight between two mages, and her opponent was in the wrong. Even if this could only end in death for one of them, it was an outcome both parties could accept. Kill or be killed. Morality had no weight on the scale. But this time was different. Her opponent was neither her enemy nor mage. Even if she was prepared to kill them, this person was likely not ready to die. That morality did factor into it, now. Was she truly up to the task of murdering an innocent person? Could she swallow the fact that this was a common occurrence for a mage? She snorted sardonically. Being a mage did not mean that Aoko was some kind of monk who could cut ties with the real world on a whim. If there was one thing Aoko hated, it was doing things without conviction or an understanding of exactly why she was doing them. When she acted, she preferred to act decisively.
やるしかないだろうね。
As she said it, she got up from the sofa, having had her fill of the ceiling for one day. Aoko had returned to the Aoko of always, and Alice was done probing her.
じゃあ。
As if to reward her, Alice produced a small bottle. It fit neatly in the palm of her hand. The bottle looked completely out of place in her slender fingers. The glass was cloudy and it appeared empty. Some shreds of paper remained on the front where there was once a label.
何よそれ。
Ako stared at the bottle suspiciously.
収納の小瓶。ちょうど一つ余ってたからあげるわ。はい？名前は忘れたけど、中国の小説に出てきたのと同じよ。
Ako was miraculously able to parse what Alice meant.
それってレンゲ堂の兄弟の話？じゃああの赤いひょうたんと同じなわけ？言いたくないけど、そこら辺の風邪薬のラベルを無理やり剥がして小瓶に見せかけてるそれが？
Alice looked at the bottle and acknowledged how ordinary it looked. She also understood that she would not be the one using it as she set it on the table.
赤いひょうたんじゃなくて陽子玉の上瓶の方。そういう問題じゃない。私は魔術師としての雰囲気を論じてるんだ。些細なことを気にするのね。せいろがんの瓶じゃないだけいいと思うけど。
She made a good point.
蓋を開けて相手の名前を尋ねればいいから。ただし相手に抵抗する意志が残っている場合、小瓶は割れるから気をつけて。
Ako raised her eyebrows.
ちょっと待った。抵抗する意志があるとダメって、眠っている時にやれってこと？それは試したことがなかったわ。眠っているのに返事をする人っているの？たまにいるけど。まあ確かに珍しいわね、そういう人。
In that case, one would have to weaken them until they were about to pass out.
あ、そうそう。薬や魔術がかかっていると、その重さでも割れるから気をつけて。使えない。それってほとんど役立たずってことじゃない。それは青子次第ね。
Oh, mobbing. Alice turned away as she replied, as if the topic no longer mattered of her.
アリスがこういう小道具好きなのは知ってたけどね。これも趣味なわけ
Ako asked, hoping Alice would deny it.
多分。それでどうするの？
Without answering, Ako dithered a bit before taking the bottle and putting it in her pocket. She figured she might be able to find some use for it. Two hours had passed, and the clock struck 9. The conversation had moved from the drawing room to the sunroom, and had manifested into the kind of scene one would not expect in such a mansion.
まあ本当はね、飛び丸に任せる気はなかったんだけど。
A hot earthenware pot sat on the table. Ako spat out complaints to no one in particular as she plucked food from it with her chopsticks. Tonight they were eating a traditional Japanese meal that looked out of place in this mansion. When it came to the kind of Japanese hot pot, where all one had to do was buy and boil ingredients, it was usually Aoko's responsibility. Alice sat across from Aoko as he silently poked at the pot with a fork.
山城のやつが来るなり、しずきくんはまだ部活に入っていないから面倒を見てあげてくれないかな、なんて言ってくるもんだからさ。
The egg she had plucked was still as silky as a baby's button, so she returned it to the pot. She seemed for the shirataki noodles. She set it for the shirataki noodles instead. そりゃあのバカがバイトで忙しいのは知ってるわよ。だからできるだけ春先までのんびりしてて、あんなのでも親身になってくれそうな部の部長に当たってみたのに、ありがとうの一つもないってのはちょっと尺に触るわよね。ねえ、聞いてるアリス。As if her mouth was full, she simply nodded in response. Her expression stated that she had no interest nor opinion in the matter, but she at least appeared to be listening. Satisfied, Aoko nibbled on some Hanten fish cake. それに私、いい人なんて言われるやつは信用できないのよ。あろうことか、飛び丸までそんなこと口走る始末だし。あれはいい人なんじゃなくて、ただぼんやりしてるだけなんだっての。だいたい、あそこまで言われて怒りもしないなんてどうかしてるわ。Her thoughts went to what had happened in the student council room earlier that day. She remembered how non-responsive Sojo had been to her words. His unconcerned face alone was enough for her to swallow the rest of her handpan without chewing it.
何が分かってるんだなよ。
His words were a lot like those. His words were a lot like those that ended her childhood.
青子ちゃんは分かっているんだね。それでも自分であり続けられるということはとても強いことなんだよ。
Perhaps it was meant as a compliment, but she took it as a patronizing way to pity her, because the person who said it had acted like she was looking at a wounded animal.
あんな変態の言ってたことなんて今さらどうでもいいけどさ。
That episode might have made her the most confused she had ever been in her life. Yet, what shocked a young Aoko the most was to look of pity on the face of the person she admired the most. The abrupt comment stopped her in their tracks.
ごめん、聞いてなかった。喧嘩ってあの喧嘩？
Alice nodded.
あなたの感想だけじゃ状況はよくつかめないけど。つまり、青子はその人に喧嘩を売りたかったのね。
Oh, der Gesichtsausdruck. Alice bit into the very last handpan. Her remark was unexpected but completely on point.
なんでそうなるのよ。私はあんなのと1秒だって関わりたくないだけだってば。だいたいそれどころじゃないし、興味とか全くないし、会話もこれ以上ないってぐらい簡潔に切り上げたし。ならどうして今そんな話をするの？それはあんたに今日の調査過程を知らせてあげたのよ。それ以外何があるっていうの？
What other reason could Alice been suggesting Aoko had for bringing it up? It would be several hours later in bed that Aoko realized that she had dug her own grave.
いいけど、私は別に。ただ、青子は本当にその人が嫌いなの？
Alice ate her hot pot in silence as if she was honoring some sort of sacred ritual. Her face was indifferent as always, but she was secretly enjoying how flustered Aoko was. Aoko remained oblivious to this. Normally she would have noticed immediately, but she was not quite herself at this moment.
本当にって、そりゃそうよ。気に食わないって何度も言ってるじゃない。そう。具体的には？は？具体的にはって、そんなのに理由なんて。
She trailed off as she finally realized how disagreeable she was being. She could come up with no reason why. Her instincts had told her that she was incompatible with that hick. But why such a strong reaction? More than anything in the world, Aoko had hated emotions without reason, and decisions made with no rationale.
嫌いなものは嫌いなんだから、ちゃんとどっかに理由があるんだと思うけど。
She became more flustered the more she talked. Unfortunately for her, she could not come up with a coherent reason to hate Sojuro Shizuki. Aber ich würde dann sagen, an dem Punkt beende ich mal diese Folge. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.